There is a version of you that exists beyond fear, beyond emotional dependency, and beyond the need for anyone's approval, but most people never meet that version of themselves because they are too busy distracting themselves with constant noise and endless attachment. They fear being alone, not realizing that solitude is not emptiness, but transformation. Buddhism teaches that the strongest mind is not the one surrounded by constant attention, but the one that remains peaceful and unbothered even in complete silence. Because when you stop depending on others to feel complete, you stop being controlled by their presence, their absence, and their opinions. And in that moment, you step into a level of inner power that most people never experience in their entire life. 1. Your mind becomes clear when you stop absorbing everyone's noise. Most people live with a mind that is not truly their own, because it has been slowly shaped and filled by the voices of others for many years. From childhood, you were told who you should be, how you should behave, what success should look like, and what others expect from you. Your parents gave you their fears, society gave you its standards, and the people around you gave you their opinions, whether those opinions were helpful or harmful. Every conversation you have leaves behind something invisible inside your mind. Every criticism leaves a trace of doubt. Every rejection leaves a trace of insecurity. Even every praise leaves a trace of dependency, because it teaches your mind to seek validation again and again. Over time, your mind becomes crowded, not with your own truth, but with layers of external influence that slowly bury your original voice. This is why many people feel confused about their life, even when everything appears normal on the outside. They constantly question themselves, constantly overthink their decisions, and constantly feel pressure without knowing exactly why. It is because their mind is no longer a quiet, clear space. It has become a battlefield of different voices, different expectations, and different fears. One voice tells them to follow their heart, while another voice tells them to follow society. One voice tells them to rest, while another voice tells them they are falling behind. This internal conflict creates mental exhaustion, and this exhaustion makes it difficult to think clearly or feel at peace. But when you spend time alone, away from constant interaction, stimulation, and influence, something powerful begins to happen inside your mind. At first, it may feel uncomfortable because you are no longer distracted. You are no longer escaping yourself through conversations, notifications, or external noise. You are simply present with your own thoughts. And in this quiet space, the external voices begin to lose their strength. The pressure that once felt overwhelming begins to weaken. The constant emotional tension begins to soften. Slowly, your mind begins returning to its natural state, which is calm, clear, and stable. Buddhism teaches that the mind, in its original nature, is like clear water. When water is constantly disturbed, it becomes cloudy, and you cannot see through it. But when the water is left undisturbed, the dirt slowly settles, and the water becomes clear again. Your mind works the same way. It does not need to be fixed. It does not need to be forced. It simply needs space and stillness. Solitude gives your mind that space. It allows your thoughts to settle. It allows your emotions to calm down. It allows your awareness to strengthen. As your mind becomes clearer, you begin noticing things you could not see before. You begin understanding yourself better. You begin recognizing which thoughts are truly yours and which thoughts came from fear, pressure, or external influence. You stop reacting automatically to everything around you, and instead, you begin responding with awareness and intention. This shift may seem small, but it is the beginning of true mental freedom. You are no longer controlled by every opinion, every criticism, or every expectation. You begin thinking independently, calmly, and clearly. This clarity changes the way you experience life. You make decisions with confidence instead of fear. You remain calm in situations that once disturbed you. You stop overthinking every small thing because your mind is no longer overwhelmed. Buddhism teaches that this clarity is not something you create, but something you uncover when you remove distraction and return to stillness. When you stop absorbing everyone's noise, you finally begin hearing the quiet, stable, and wise voice that was always within you. 2. You stop depending on others to feel emotionally stable. Most people do not realize how much of their emotional stability depends on others, because this dependency develops slowly and quietly over time. It begins in small ways, such as feeling happy when someone gives you attention or feeling hurt when someone ignores you. At first, these reactions may seem normal, but over time, your emotional state becomes deeply connected to how others treat you. Your mood begins to rise and fall based on external behavior instead of internal stability. If someone responds to your message, you feel valued. If someone does not respond, you begin to question yourself. If someone appreciates you, you feel confident. If someone criticizes you, you begin to feel weak or insecure. This creates an emotional system that is fragile, unstable, and constantly dependent on external circumstances. This dependency creates silent suffering because you are no longer in control of your emotional peace. Instead, your peace is controlled by the unpredictable behavior of others. People may change, people may leave, people may become distant, and people may not always give you the attention or validation you expect. When your emotional stability depends on something that is outside your control, your peace becomes temporary and unreliable. This is why many people feel emotionally exhausted, because they are constantly reacting to external events instead of being rooted in internal stability. Buddhism teaches that attachment is one of the main sources of suffering, because attachment creates dependency, and dependency creates fear. You begin to fear losing people, fear losing approval, and fear being alone, not because you are weak, but because your emotional system has been trained to depend on external support. This fear makes you tolerate situations that disturb your peace. It makes you seek validation even when it is not healthy. It makes you remain emotionally connected to things that drain your energy. When you begin spending time alone, this dependency slowly begins to weaken. At first, it may feel unfamiliar because your mind has been conditioned to seek constant connection. You may feel uncomfortable sitting with yourself without distraction, but as you continue spending time in solitude, something powerful begins to change. You begin realizing that your emotional stability does not disappear when you are alone. You begin realizing that your peace is not created by others, but exists within you. You begin learning how to calm yourself without needing someone else to reassure you. Your nervous system begins to stabilize because it is no longer constantly reacting to external emotional triggers. You begin developing emotional independence, which means your inner state remains stable regardless of external behavior. When someone ignores you, you remain calm. When someone criticizes you, you remain centered. When someone leaves your life, you remain whole. This does not mean you stop caring about people. It means your peace is no longer controlled by their presence or absence. Buddhism teaches that true peace comes from within, not from external conditions. When you stop depending on others to regulate your emotional state, you develop a strength that cannot be taken away. You become emotionally self-sufficient, which means your happiness, your stability, and your peace belong to you. This creates a deep sense of freedom because you are no longer emotionally controlled by everything happening around you. You begin to experience life from a place of calm instead of fear, and from a place of wholeness instead of dependency. This is the moment when you stop chasing emotional security from the outside and finally discover the stability that has always existed within you. 3. You become unbothered by things that once controlled you. Most people spend their lives in a constant state of emotional reaction, even though they may not realize it. Their inner peace rises and falls depending on what others say, what others do, and how others treat them. A single negative comment can disturb their entire day. A small rejection can create deep emotional pain. Even the fear of being judged can make them change their behavior, hide their true self, or live in a way that does not feel authentic. This constant emotional reaction slowly weakens the mind because it trains you to give your inner peace away to external forces that you cannot control. When your mind is always reacting, you are not truly living freely. You are living as a prisoner of external circumstances. Your emotions become controlled by other people's opinions, actions, and decisions. This creates instability because external conditions are always changing. People are unpredictable. Situations are unpredictable. Life itself is unpredictable. If your peace depends on things that are always changing, your peace will always be fragile. Buddhism teaches that suffering does not come from events themselves, but from your attachment and reaction to those events. The problem is not what happens outside you. The problem is how your mind reacts to it. When the mind is untrained, it reacts automatically. It reacts with anger when criticized. It reacts with fear when rejected. It reacts with sadness when something changes. This automatic reaction gives external situations power over your internal state. Solitude begins to break this pattern in a very powerful way. When you spend time alone, away from constant stimulation and emotional triggers, your nervous system begins to calm down. Your mind is no longer constantly activated by external events. Instead, it begins to slow down and stabilize. You begin observing your thoughts and emotions without immediately reacting to them. You begin creating space between what happens and how you respond. This space changes everything, because in that space, you regain control over your inner state. Instead of reacting automatically, you begin responding consciously. When someone criticizes you, you no longer feel instantly attacked. Instead, you observe the situation calmly. You understand that their words reflect their own mind, not your worth. When someone ignores you, you no longer feel rejected because you are no longer dependent on their attention to feel complete. When situations do not go as expected, you no longer panic because your peace is no longer tied to perfect outcomes. Buddhism teaches that the trained mind remains stable in both praise and criticism, in both gain and loss, and in both comfort and discomfort. This stability is not emotional numbness, it is emotional mastery. You still experience life fully, but you are no longer controlled by it. You feel emotions, but emotions do not control your identity or destroy your peace. As you continue spending time in solitude, your emotional resilience becomes stronger. Things that once disturbed you begin losing their power. Situations that once created anxiety begin feeling manageable. You begin realizing that most things that once bothered you only had power because you gave them power. When you stop giving your energy to every external trigger, those triggers begin losing their influence over you. This is what it truly means to become unbothered. It does not mean life becomes easier. It means your mind becomes stronger. It means your peace becomes deeper than external chaos. It means your inner stability remains untouched, even when the world around you is unstable. This is the beginning of true freedom, because nothing outside you can control the calm that exists within you. 4. You discover who you truly are without external influence. Most people spend their entire life becoming someone they were taught to be, instead of discovering who they truly are. From a very young age, you are shaped by expectations that slowly condition your behavior, your thoughts, and your identity. You learn what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. You learn how to behave in ways that gain approval and how to avoid behaviors that lead to rejection. Over time, you begin adjusting yourself to fit into the expectations of family, society, and the people around you. This adjustment may help you feel accepted, but it slowly disconnects you from your true nature. Without realizing it, many of your decisions begin coming from fear instead of truth. You choose paths that feel safe instead of paths that feel meaningful. You say things that maintain acceptance instead of things that reflect your true thoughts. You hide parts of yourself to avoid judgment, and you present versions of yourself that feel easier for others to accept. This creates an invisible distance between who you truly are and who you have become. You may appear confident on the outside, but deep inside there is confusion because your life no longer feels fully aligned with your inner truth. This is why many people feel lost, even when they are surrounded by others. They constantly seek clarity, purpose, and direction, but they struggle to find it because their mind is still influenced by external voices. When you are constantly surrounded by people, their presence subtly shapes your identity. Their expectations influence your decisions. Their opinions influence your self-perception. Their approval influences your sense of worth. This makes it difficult to hear your own inner voice clearly because it is constantly competing with external influence. Solitude removes this external influence and creates the space necessary for self-discovery. When you are alone, there is no pressure to perform, no need to impress, and no expectations to fulfill. You are no longer reacting to the emotional environment around you. Instead, you are simply existing with yourself. At first, this may feel unfamiliar because many people are not used to being fully present with themselves. But as you continue spending time alone, your mind begins to settle and your true self begins to emerge naturally. Buddhism teaches that your true nature is already complete, but it becomes hidden beneath layers of conditioning, attachment, and fear. These layers are created over time through repeated exposure to external influence. Solitude begins to dissolve these layers. Without constant external pressure, your mind begins to return to its natural state. You begin to notice your true preferences, your true thoughts, and your true emotional patterns without distortion. You begin asking deeper questions that you may have never asked before. You begin understanding what truly matters to you, not what others told you should matter. You begin recognizing which desires are authentic and which desires were created by social pressure. You begin reconnecting with parts of yourself that were suppressed or ignored for many years. This process strengthens your sense of identity because it is no longer based on external approval. Your confidence begins coming from self-understanding instead of validation. You begin trusting yourself more because you are no longer constantly seeking external guidance. Your decisions become clearer because they are guided by internal awareness instead of external pressure. Buddhism teaches that self-awareness is the foundation of liberation. When you truly know yourself, you are no longer easily influenced by fear, judgment, or expectation. You become stable in your identity regardless of how others see you. You no longer need to change yourself to gain acceptance because your sense of worth no longer depends on external approval. This creates a deep and unshakable inner peace because you are no longer divided between who you are and who you pretend to be. You are simply yourself, without fear, without performance, and without confusion. This alignment between your inner truth and your external life creates a powerful sense of freedom. When you discover who you truly are, you stop chasing identity outside yourself. You stop trying to become someone else. You stop seeking validation to confirm your worth. Instead, you begin living with quiet confidence, knowing that your value was never dependent on external recognition. This is one of the greatest gifts of solitude, because in the absence of external influence, you finally meet the person you were always meant to be. 5. Your energy stops being drained by unnecessary attachments. Most people feel mentally and emotionally exhausted, not because life is too difficult, but because their energy is constantly being pulled in too many directions. They are thinking about what others said, worrying about what others think, replaying conversations in their mind, and carrying emotional weight that does not truly belong to them. Their mind rarely gets the opportunity to rest because it is always connected to external situations, external people, and external expectations. This constant attachment creates a silent drain on their energy, even when they are physically doing nothing. Every attachment requires energy to maintain. When you are attached to someone's approval, your mind constantly seeks their validation, and you begin adjusting your behavior to maintain their acceptance. When you are attached to someone's presence, you begin fearing their absence, and this fear creates anxiety and emotional instability. When you are attached to outcomes, you begin worrying about things that have not even happened yet, and this worry keeps your nervous system in a state of tension. Over time, this continuous emotional engagement weakens your inner stability and leaves you feeling mentally tired, emotionally heavy, and spiritually disconnected from yourself. Buddhism teaches that attachment is not love, and attachment is not strength. Attachment is dependency, and dependency creates suffering because it gives external things control over your internal state. The more attached you become, the more vulnerable you become to emotional disturbance. When things go the way you expect, you feel temporary relief. But when things change, you feel pain, anxiety, or fear because your peace was never rooted within you. It was rooted in something temporary and outside your control. When you begin spending time alone and normalize being unbothered, something begins to change in a powerful and quiet way. You begin reclaiming your energy. Your mind is no longer constantly focused on others. You are no longer analyzing every interaction or worrying about every outcome. Your attention begins returning to yourself, and this creates a deep sense of calm. You begin realizing how much energy you were losing by being emotionally attached to everything around you. Solitude teaches you how to protect your energy without becoming cold or disconnected. You begin understanding that not everything deserves your emotional investment. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every situation deserves your reaction. This awareness allows you to conserve your energy and use it in ways that strengthen your mind instead of weaken it. Your nervous system begins to relax because it is no longer constantly preparing for emotional disturbance. Your thoughts become slower, calmer, and more organized. Your emotional state becomes lighter because you are no longer carrying unnecessary emotional weight. You begin feeling more present, more stable, and more peaceful without needing anything external to maintain that peace. Buddhism teaches that true peace comes from non-attachment, which means allowing things to exist without depending on them for your emotional stability. This does not mean you stop caring about people or stop experiencing life. It means your peace is no longer dependent on external conditions. You can appreciate people without needing them to complete you. You can experience situations without losing yourself in them. You can allow things to come and go without losing your inner balance. As your attachments weaken, your energy becomes stronger, your mind becomes clearer, your emotional system becomes more resilient. You begin feeling less affected by things that once drained you, because your peace is no longer being constantly disturbed. You are no longer living in reaction to everything around you. Instead, you are living from a place of inner stability and self-control. This conserved energy begins transforming your entire experience of life. You feel more focused, more calm, and more in control of yourself. Your presence becomes stronger because your energy is no longer scattered. You begin living with quiet strength, knowing that your peace does not depend on anything outside yourself. This is the power of protecting your energy, because when your energy belongs fully to you, your mind becomes peaceful, your emotions become stable, and your inner strength becomes unshakable. 6. You build inner strength that cannot be taken away. Most people spend their lives trying to build strength in ways that can easily be taken away from them. They build strength through money, through relationships, through social status, and through external achievements, believing that these things will make them feel secure and powerful. For a moment, these things can create the illusion of strength because they provide comfort, recognition, and a sense of importance. But external strength is always fragile because it depends on conditions that are constantly changing. Money can be lost, relationships can end, status can disappear. And when these external sources of strength are gone, many people feel lost, weak, and unstable because their strength was never truly their own. Buddhism teaches that true strength does not come from controlling the outside world. True strength comes from mastering the inner world. It comes from developing a mind that remains calm in uncertainty, stable in loss, and peaceful in isolation. This kind of strength cannot be seen, but it can be felt deeply because it creates emotional independence and mental resilience that no external event can destroy. This inner strength is not built through comfort. It is built through solitude, self-awareness, and the willingness to face yourself without distraction. When you spend time alone, you are no longer escaping your thoughts or avoiding your emotions through external stimulation. You are simply present with yourself. At first, this may feel uncomfortable because your mind has been trained to depend on distraction. Many people use constant noise, constant interaction, and constant activity to avoid facing their inner world. But when you remove these distractions, you begin to see your thoughts clearly. You begin to notice your fears, your insecurities, and your emotional patterns without interference. This awareness is the beginning of true strength, because you cannot strengthen what you refuse to face. When you sit with your thoughts instead of running from them, you begin understanding yourself more deeply. You begin seeing that your fears are not permanent. You begin realizing that your emotions rise and fall naturally without needing to control them. You begin learning how to remain calm even when uncomfortable thoughts appear. Buddhism teaches that the mind becomes strong through observation and acceptance, not through resistance or avoidance. When you observe your emotions without reacting to them, you stop being controlled by them. When you accept discomfort without escaping it, you develop resilience. When you remain present with yourself in solitude, you strengthen your ability to remain stable in all situations. Over time, this practice creates a deep and unshakable inner foundation. You begin realizing that you do not need constant reassurance to feel stable. You do not need constant attention to feel valuable. You do not need constant distraction to feel at peace. Your strength begins coming from your ability to remain calm and centered within yourself, regardless of external circumstances. This inner strength changes the way you experience challenges. Situations that once created anxiety no longer disturb you as deeply because your stability no longer depends on external outcomes. Loss no longer destroys you because your identity is no longer attached to external things. Uncertainty no longer creates panic because your peace is rooted within yourself. You begin trusting yourself more because you have seen your ability to remain stable in solitude. You have seen your ability to face yourself without fear. You have seen your ability to exist peacefully without needing constant validation or distraction. This trust becomes the foundation of true confidence because it is based on direct experience, not external approval. Buddhism teaches that the strongest person is not the one who controls others, but the one who has mastered their own mind. When you master your mind, external situations lose their power over you. You remain calm when others panic. You remain stable when others react emotionally. You remain peaceful when others are disturbed. This is true strength because it cannot be taken away by loss, rejection, or change. It exists within you, independent of external conditions. It becomes a permanent part of your being. When you build this inner strength, you no longer fear being alone, because you realize that solitude is not weakness. It is the place where your strength was built. It is the place where your mind became stable. It is the place where you discovered that everything you needed was already within you. This is the strength that makes you unbothered, unshaken, and truly free. 7. You realize that peace was never outside you. Most people spend their entire lives searching for peace in places where peace was never meant to be found. They believe peace will come when they find the right person, achieve the right level of success, earn enough money, or gain enough recognition from others. They tell themselves that peace exists somewhere in the future, waiting for them once everything in their external world finally becomes perfect. This belief keeps them in a constant state of chasing, constantly trying to control life, constantly trying to fix things outside themselves, hoping that one day they will finally feel complete. But the truth is, even when people achieve these external things, the peace they feel is temporary. The mind quickly finds something else to worry about. New fears appear, new desires appear, new insecurities appear. This is because external conditions can never provide permanent peace. They can provide comfort, distraction, and temporary satisfaction, but they cannot create lasting inner stability. Buddhism teaches that suffering begins when you believe peace depends on external conditions, because external conditions are always changing, always uncertain, and always outside your full control. When you begin spending time alone, without constant distraction, without constant stimulation, and without constant external validation, something deeply important begins to reveal itself. At first, your mind may resist the silence. It may search for something to do, something to check, or someone to connect with. This is because the mind has been conditioned to depend on external stimulation for comfort. But if you remain in solitude long enough, your mind begins to slow down. The constant urgency begins to fade. The restless search for external fulfillment begins to weaken. And in that quiet space, you begin noticing something that was always there, but was hidden beneath noise and distraction. You begin noticing a natural sense of calm that does not depend on anything outside you. You begin realizing that your existence itself is stable. Your breath continues without effort. Your awareness continues without needing external support. You are still here, still complete, even without external validation. Buddhism teaches that peace is not something you create. It is something you uncover when you stop disturbing your mind. Your mind, in its natural state, is peaceful. But constant attachment, constant desire, and constant distraction cover that peace like clouds covering the sky. The sky itself never disappears. It remains vast, open, and calm. But the clouds make it seem hidden. Solitude removes those clouds. It allows your mind to return to its original state. As you spend more time alone, you begin realizing that peace was never in other people. It was never in achievements. It was never in external validation. Those things only distracted you from seeing the peace that already existed within you. You begin understanding that your peace does not need to be earned. It does not need to be chased. It does not need to be created. It simply needs to be recognized. This realization changes everything about how you experience life. You stop chasing people to feel complete. You stop chasing outcomes to feel secure. You stop fearing solitude because you realize solitude is not emptiness. It is fullness without distraction. It is the space where your mind reconnects with its natural calm. You begin moving through life with a different kind of confidence. Not the confidence that comes from external success, but the confidence that comes from internal stability. You know that even if things change, even if people leave, even if circumstances become uncertain, your peace remains within you. This creates a deep sense of freedom because your emotional stability is no longer dependent on fragile external conditions. Buddhism teaches that liberation comes when you stop searching outside for what already exists inside. When you stop chasing peace, peace begins to reveal itself naturally. When you stop disturbing your mind becomes calm. When you stop depending on external validation, your sense of completeness becomes permanent. You begin realizing that you were never incomplete. You were never missing anything. You were never truly empty. The only thing that was missing was your awareness of the peace that already lived within you. And when you finally see this clearly, something inside you becomes unshakable. You stop fearing loneliness. You stop fearing silence. You stop fearing being alone. Because you understand that being alone was never the absence of peace. It was the place where peace was waiting for you all along. 8. You stop chasing and start attracting everything that truly belongs to you. Most people spend their lives chasing things, chasing attention, chasing approval, chasing relationships, chasing success, and chasing a version of life they believe will finally make them feel complete. Their mind is always reaching outward, always trying to hold on to something, always trying to control outcomes that are not fully within their power. This constant chasing creates inner tension because the mind is never at rest. It is always waiting, always hoping, always fearing loss. Even when they achieve something they were chasing, the satisfaction is temporary because the mind quickly finds something else to pursue. This endless cycle of chasing keeps the mind in a state of restlessness and emotional instability. When you chase people, you give them power over your emotional state. When you chase validation, you become dependent on external approval to feel worthy. When you chase outcomes, you create fear of failure because your peace becomes tied to things that may or may not happen. Buddhism teaches that this constant craving is the root of suffering because it keeps the mind trapped in a state of dissatisfaction, always believing that peace exists somewhere else instead of within the present moment. When you begin to normalize being alone and unbothered, something profound begins to shift inside you. Your mind stops reaching outward in desperation. Your emotional state stops depending on external responses. You begin to feel complete within yourself, without needing constant reassurance or attention. This internal completeness removes the desperate energy that once drove you to chase everything outside yourself. When you are no longer chasing, your presence becomes calm, stable, and grounded. You begin making decisions from clarity instead of fear. You begin interacting with others from strength instead of dependency. You no longer tolerate situations that disturb your peace because you no longer fear being alone. This creates a powerful shift in your energy because people can sense when someone is emotionally independent and internally stable. Buddhism teaches that when the mind is free from craving and attachment, life begins to flow naturally. Instead of forcing outcomes, you allow things to unfold. Instead of chasing people, you allow the right people to enter your life naturally. Instead of forcing yourself into places where you do not belong, you begin aligning yourself with environments that support your peace and growth. This does not mean you stop taking action or stop pursuing your goals. It means your actions are no longer driven by desperation or fear. They are driven by clarity and inner stability. You move forward with calm intention, not emotional urgency. You allow life to unfold without forcing everything to happen immediately. This internal stability creates a quiet form of power because you are no longer easily disturbed by rejection, delay, or uncertainty. If something leaves your life, you remain stable because you know your peace was never dependent on it. If something enters your life, you appreciate it without becoming attached to it. This balance allows you to experience life fully without losing yourself in it. Over time, you begin noticing something surprising. Things that once felt difficult begin flowing more naturally. The right opportunities appear without forcing them. The right people connect with you without chasing them. The right environments become accessible without desperation. This happens because your mind is no longer clouded by fear, insecurity, or emotional dependency. Your clarity allows you to recognize and align with what truly belongs to you. Buddhism teaches that when the mind becomes peaceful and free from attachment, suffering decreases and harmony increases. Life does not become perfect, but your experience of life becomes peaceful. You stop fighting reality. You stop forcing outcomes. You stop exhausting yourself trying to control everything. Instead, you begin living from a place of trust, stability, and inner completeness. You realize that what truly belongs to you does not require chasing. It aligns with you naturally when your mind is calm and your energy is stable. This is the quiet power of being alone and unbothered. You are no longer desperate for anything because you have discovered completeness within yourself. And when you are complete within yourself, life begins responding to your calm presence instead of your restless pursuit. This is when everything begins to flow toward you, not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped running away from yourself. Most people will spend their entire lives trying to escape being alone, without realizing that the very thing they are avoiding is the doorway to their greatest strength. They fill their lives with constant noise, constant distraction, and constant connection, hoping that it will protect them from discomfort, but in reality, it only keeps them disconnected from themselves. They become dependent on external validation to feel worthy, dependent on external presence to feel secure, and dependent on external outcomes to feel at peace. This creates a fragile inner world where their emotional stability is constantly shaken by things they cannot control. But Buddhism teaches a truth that is both simple and powerful, and that truth is that your peace, your strength, and your completeness were never outside you. They were never in other people, never in achievements, and never in external approval. They were always within you, waiting to be discovered beneath the noise, beneath the attachment, and beneath the fear of being alone. When you begin to normalize solitude, you begin to reconnect with your true nature. Your mind becomes clear, because it is no longer filled with everyone else's noise. Your emotions become stable because they are no longer dependent on external reactions. Your identity becomes strong because it is no longer shaped by external expectations. You stop chasing validation because you no longer need others to confirm your worth. You stop reacting to everything because your peace is no longer fragile. You begin to realize that being alone was never emptiness. It was space, space for your mind to heal, space for your strength to grow, space for your awareness to deepen, space for your true self to emerge without interference. This is where your real power begins, not when everyone is watching you, not when everyone is approving of you, but when you are completely alone and still remain calm, still remain whole, and still remain at peace. Because the moment you become comfortable being alone and unbothered is the moment you become free. Free from dependency, free from fear, free from emotional instability, free from the need to chase anything outside yourself. And in that freedom, you discover something that most people never discover in their entire life. You were never weak for being alone. You were becoming unshakable.